My uncle stole my inheritance by promising my father high-yield investments and used the money to travel to Europe. And now, I don't know if I can ever forgive him. My uncle, Charles, always seemed like the generous type. He was the family's golden child, the one who made it big in tech and never let anyone forget it. He'd send us extravagant gifts, always with a flourish and a reminder of how successful he was. Growing up, we were all a little envious, but he always had a smile and the gifts were nice, so we put up with it. My family, the Bakers, always struggled a bit financially. My parents, Robert and Sarah, worked hard, but we never had that kind of disposable income Charles seemed to swim in. He offered to help my dad with some of his brilliant business ideas, and my dad put a lot of faith in Charles. He always had big plans and told everyone that the Baker family would be rich eventually. We never saw the money, but Charles was always smiling and telling us to trust the process. My dad would defend him to the end if any of us ever said anything negative about my uncle. After a while, we all stopped questioning his behavior around money. It had become clear to all of us, except for my dad, that it was pointless to even bring it up. When my grandfather, George, passed away a couple of years ago, he left a decent sum of money split equally between his children, my dad, my aunt, and Charles. My aunt, Susan, used her share to pay off some debts and help her kids. My dad and uncle decided to invest theirs. According to my dad, he had all the financial information that Charles kept for them, so he had no reason to distrust him. Charles set up some high-yield investment opportunities, and of course, my dad trusted every word. Recently, though, things started to feel weird. The gifts Charles was sending got smaller and less frequent. He started canceling plans last minute, especially if they had anything to do with money. At first, I thought maybe he was just getting busier. My mom wasn't sure and seemed to be more suspicious about Charles's behavior. She was the only one who kept saying that it felt off. My dad, however, shut down any negative comments about Charles. I tried to let it go for the sake of peace in my family, but things just kept getting worse. It all came to a head a few weeks ago when my mom found my dad's financial statements when he was doing the taxes. That's when we realized everything was a lie. The high-yield investments, non-existent. The money my dad had inherited and handed over to my uncle, gone. Just empty accounts and a whole lot of promises. She confronted him, and he was shaken, to say the least. It turns out, my uncle had been using my dad's share, along with everyone else's money, to fund a lavish lifestyle. He hadn't invested anything. My mom decided to call his mom and tell her what was going on, but Charles had been spending his mother's inheritance money as well. She was devastated when my mom told her. After that conversation, my dad decided to call Charles. Charles confessed, not that he was sorry, but because he was caught. He didn't seem to have any real remorse. My dad was devastated. He just sat there staring at the wall, not knowing what to do. My mom asked Charles where the money went. Charles didn't say anything, he simply hung up. I've never seen my dad so broken. I knew that this would affect the family, but I never thought it would be so drastic. He's always been so proud, so self-sufficient, and now he felt like he failed everyone. I tried to reassure him that none of this was his fault, that this is all my uncle's fault, but he still blamed himself. My mom is furious, but she's also trying to hold us together. My aunt was just as mad and demanded that we find a way to get the money back. After long conversations between my mom, my aunt, and my wife, we decided to try to get the money back, even if we had to take it by force. I don't know what the future holds for the Baker family, but one thing is certain. Our perception of Charles has been shattered, and it will never be the same. We've filed a police report, and we are looking into hiring a lawyer. We know it will be a long shot to recover everything, but we have to try. We're not going down without a fight. Update 1, it's been a month since we discovered the betrayal. Things have been intense. My dad is still struggling, but he started seeing a therapist, which my mom insisted on. My mom is trying to be strong, but I can tell she's emotionally exhausted. She tries her best to make things okay for everyone. We found out through some financial records that my uncle has been spending insane amounts of money on expensive cars, trips to Europe, and designer clothes. We did everything we could to find all the proof possible to take this to a lawyer. We are waiting to hear if they're going to accept our case. The police investigation is still ongoing, but according to the detective, my uncle is not being cooperative. They couldn't get any information from him. We tried to contact him to try to understand what led him to steal from us, to see if we can get any sort of explanation for his actions, but he ignores everyone's calls and texts. He changed his phone number, and we weren't able to find his current address. He disappeared. He became a ghost. The emotional strain has been heavy on all of us, but we try to find comfort in each other. My aunt was able to get a bit of financial help from my uncle's former business partner who knew about Charles's money scheme. This was the only bit of good news that we received recently. My cousin, David, is being supportive of my dad. They've spent countless hours talking. It has honestly been nice seeing them build a bond through these tough circumstances. My wife has also been super supportive of my family. She helped my mom organize some of the financial information to make it easier for the lawyer to use. My siblings, Amelia and Ethan, have been trying to keep things light as well, but we all feel the weight of what's happening. The family dinners, which were always a little chaotic, are filled with an unsettling silence. The empty chair where Charles used to sit is a constant reminder of his betrayal. We're trying to create a new normal, a way forward, but it feels like navigating through quicksand. Some days we laugh, other days we cry, most days we just feel numb. I'm starting to have doubts that we'll ever truly recover from this. It feels like all the pieces have been shattered. I'm doing my best to be there for my family, but I feel like I'm constantly running on empty. But we're still fighting and doing what we can to get some semblance of justice. Update 2. It's been 6 months since everything happened. We got the call from the police this week. Charles had been arrested at the airport. He was trying to board a flight to a non-extradition country. My dad was very emotional when he found out. He said it was like a weight was lifted off his shoulders. According to his lawyer, Charles is being charged with fraud, embezzlement, and theft. We're all bracing ourselves for a long legal battle. The good news is that the lawyer believes that there's a good chance that we can at least recover some of the money. The bad news is that it will take time. I wish that they would have caught him sooner, but at least he didn't get away with it. My dad seems to be getting better, but he's still angry. My mom has been attending all the family counseling sessions and has been working on her emotional health. We can all tell that it's helping. My aunt has been a rock for everyone. She's been calling everyone in the family weekly to make sure we're doing okay. My siblings are focused on their studies and working to try to help in any way possible. I've been trying to make sure that my family has the emotional support they need. I've made sure that we spend time together and have a moment or two to laugh and have fun. I feel like we're slowly healing, but there are still many wounds that we need to tend to. We're still angry, we're still sad, and we still feel betrayed. But now we are together, working as a team to recover from what Charles did to us. The emotional damage has been severe. My family is trying to move forward and reclaim what we lost, not just the money, but also the trust. I do not believe my family can ever forget what he did to us. He destroyed something important to us, and I don't know if we'll ever get it back. I have decided to go completely no contact with my uncle. It seems that's the best option to move on with my life. Update 3. It's been a year since my life was turned upside down. Charles' trial has concluded. It took several weeks, but the judge finally reached a verdict. He's been found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 10 years in prison. That doesn't make things better, but it's something. The best part is that the lawyer was able to get back almost all the money my uncle took from my dad, my aunt, and my grandma, which is a win for us. We were all extremely relieved, but also really angry at the fact that it had to take so long to get some sort of justice. My dad finally started to move on. He forgave himself for trusting his brother. He said that he knows he has to work hard to provide for his family, but he will not put that pressure on his shoulders anymore. My mom has become the rock of the family, making sure that we're all in good health. She seems to be enjoying life a lot more. My aunt has started her own business, and she seems to be thriving. She was always the most logical in the family, and it makes me proud to see her being so independent and strong. As for me, my wife and I are planning our first vacation, which feels amazing. It's time for us to have some fun. The Baker family is far from what we used to be. We are still a little traumatized from what happened, but things seem to be getting better. I'm slowly putting my life back together after having it destroyed by the person I thought I could trust the most. We're finally on our way to moving past this horrible experience. The emotional wounds won't heal quickly, but I think that this experience has made us stronger. My family will have a happy ending. My brother inherited our family's fortune, but he secretly sabotaged my career to ensure I never surpassed him. Now I'm suing him, and he can suffer the consequences. My brother, Ethan, inherited our family's fortune, but I discovered he's been secretly sabotaging my career to ensure I never surpass him. I, 38M, come from a very wealthy family. My parents built their empire from the ground up. working tirelessly to provide my brother and I with a privileged life. My brother, Ethan, 40M, has always been the golden child. He excelled at everything he tried, effortlessly charming anyone he came across. I, on the other hand, have always struggled to gain recognition. I've worked hard, but I often felt like I was living in Ethan's shadow. When my parents passed away 5 years ago, Ethan inherited the vast majority of the family fortune, including the company, with me receiving a much smaller portion, with a trust to give me a monthly payment. Despite the financial disparity, I was content. I didn't care about money. I only wanted to establish my own legacy, to be known for my own achievements. After the inheritance, Ethan became CEO of our parents' company. I decided to start my own business in a completely unrelated field, tech, and worked my ass off to make it a success. My company has slowly started to gain traction, but progress has been painstakingly slow. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it always felt like someone or something was working against me. A few days ago, a close friend, a former colleague in the tech world, contacted me to share some concerning information. Apparently, she had stumbled upon evidence that Ethan had been sabotaging my business. He'd been using his vast network and financial influence to interfere with my contracts and manipulate clients into backing out of deals. He had also been leaking false information to smear my company's reputation. I was beyond shocked. I never imagined Ethan would stoop so low. I had always thought of him as someone who wanted to see me succeed, even if he didn't care to give me his help. I couldn't believe that the brother I grew up with could be so deceitful and competitive. I confronted him with the evidence and he denied everything at first, but when I presented the undeniable evidence, he finally admitted everything. He confessed that he had felt threatened by my success and was afraid I would surpass him, making him no longer the golden child in the eyes of the family. He claimed that he didn't want me to be a successful competitor, that our parents wanted him to be in charge. He even tried to justify his actions, but I was disgusted. I cut him off immediately and left his office without a word. It was clear there was nothing he could do to make things right. I have since filed legal action against him for interference and defamation. This isn't about the money. It's about holding him accountable for his actions. My family has turned against me, siding with Ethan because he's always been right, and this is not how we handle things. They are trying to gaslight me into forgiving him and forgetting this ever happened. My family has always been corrupt, and I think I just didn't want to see it and be another cog in the machine. I've also decided to share this with the Reddit community because this whole situation has been an insane roller coaster. What do I do? What would you do? Update 1. After sharing my story, I received a lot of valuable advice and support from the Reddit community. Many suggested that I cut ties with my brother and family and focus on rebuilding my company. Others advised that I be more assertive with the legal proceedings against my brother. Following that, I decided to take those suggestions and implemented a new strategy. First, I hired a new PR team to work on fixing my company's reputation as well as protecting it from future false rumors. They've been doing incredible work, and the media is now on our side and are aware of the truth. It even helped me find new investors that want to help. I then contacted an old friend who is now a high-end lawyer, and they agreed to represent my case pro bono, which I found astonishing. They're very confident that I will have a positive outcome with my lawsuit against Ethan. I was not ready for that to happen. When my brother was informed about the legal case, he reached out to me again, this time trying to apologize, but my lawyer advised me to not talk to him directly. I told him that if he wants to talk, he needs to go through my lawyers, but for some reason, he refuses to do so, and he keeps reaching out to me directly. I'm unsure what his reasoning is. My family, on the other hand, has been trying to talk to me every day, begging me to drop the lawsuit. They are trying to say that I'm destroying the family's legacy by going up against my own brother. I've told them that they should have taught him better than to act so deceitful. I've already cut contact with my family, so please don't change anything I'm doing. I want to thank the Reddit community for their support in this. I'm going to fight this injustice and get my company back on its feet, and will hopefully be even better than before. The advice you've all provided has been instrumental in guiding me. I have so much rage against them, I wish they felt even half of what they put me through. I'll keep updating as things progress. What should be my next step? Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. The legal process against Ethan has been progressing slowly but steadily, but my lawyer is confident we will have a positive outcome soon enough. I'm hoping to get the trial over with sooner rather than later so that I can move on. My family is still trying to gaslight and manipulate me, mostly through third parties. They've contacted my friends, extended family members, and even some of my colleagues, all while trying to convince them that I am the villain in the situation and that I should drop the case. They even attempted to make me look bad by fabricating false claims. This has not worked, as my new PR team has been able to debunk their lies and expose them, so I don't need to worry about that anymore. In a crazy twist, Ethan's own employees reached out to me because they were being asked to lie and fabricate evidence against me, and they decided to come to my defense by exposing the details they were being asked to fabricate. Many of his top executives are joining my side because they have now realized that he is dishonest and cruel and do not want to work for him anymore. My business has been booming because the public's response to Ethan's deception has made people very interested in what I do. My company now has a very positive public image, my new investors have brought a lot to the table, and we have many projects lined up. I am very optimistic for the future. My biggest challenge right now is managing the constant attempts from my family to reconcile. They now insist they are aware that Ethan is wrong and have been begging me to come back and become a family again. However, they haven't really apologized or acknowledged how this impacted me, and I do not want anything to do with them. My lawyer told me that if they keep contacting me, they would be in contempt of court, since I have made it clear that I do not wish to talk with them. He will be addressing this with their lawyers and let them know that they will have to face consequences if they reach out to me again directly or indirectly. Thank you to the Reddit community. I couldn't have done it without your help. I will be updating as the trial date comes closer. I'm feeling very powerful and optimistic right now. Update 3. The trial against Ethan finally took place last week. After several days of hearings and testimony, the judge ruled in my favor. The court found Ethan guilty of defamation and interference. They ordered him to pay me a substantial amount of compensation. I will also regain control of my company and the family wealth, but I will be handling the finances. Ethan and the family are now facing a very harsh public response. They have lost all their standing in the community because of what Ethan did. Some of my family members have expressed their shame and regret in how they treated me, but I have not forgiven them, and I don't know if I ever will. My lawyer has been trying to negotiate with them so that they leave me alone, so I think I will be safe for the foreseeable future. After the trial, I celebrated with my employees, and we had a company-wide party, which was amazing. The community is now more interested in my business than ever. I am excited for what the future will bring, and I would like to thank everyone in the Reddit community for giving me advice and support. I would never be where I am right now without you. My advice to anyone going through something similar is to trust your gut and stand your ground. There will always be people who will want you to fail, but as long as you have courage and support, you will overcome it. What do you think about the outcome?
I found a secret phone in my husband's closet with proof of an affair, and now our marriage is over. My husband, Ethan, has been living a secret double life, and now I'm not sure if I can ever trust him again. I, 32F, thought I had a pretty good marriage with my husband, 34M. We've been together for 7 years, married for 5. We have a comfortable life, a nice house, and what I thought was a great relationship. Last week, I found a hidden phone tucked away in his closet while looking for an old photo album. It was wrapped in a t-shirt, and I almost didn't see it. Curiosity got the best of me, so I powered it up. It was password protected, but after a couple tries, I managed to unlock it. What I found was like a punch to the gut. There were dozens of messages to another woman, someone named Aurora. These messages weren't just friendly, they were intimate, romantic, and frankly, disgusting. They talked about their future together and how he couldn't wait to leave our marriage to be with her. There were also pictures, lots of pictures. Pictures I never knew he was taking, things I never thought he'd say. I felt like my entire life was a lie. I spent that entire night trying to piece together how long he had been doing this, and honestly, I couldn't tell. He's always been so affectionate to me, so loving. How could someone be so good at pretending? I waited until he got back home from work the next day. I laid all the evidence out on our bed and waited for him. When he came in, he looked surprised, then terrified. He tried to deny it at first, claiming it wasn't his phone, but I'm not stupid. I pointed out the password and his face fell. He admitted to everything. He didn't try to minimize it. He just said it had been going on for 6 months. He said he had no excuse and that I didn't deserve what he did to me. He looked ashamed, but not apologetic. He said things like, I got caught up and, it just happened. That's the most infuriating part. It wasn't a one-time mistake or drunken night of weakness. It was 6 months of lying, of betrayal, of him creating a whole secret life while I was right there beside him. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just sat there with a blank face, feeling numb. I told him to pack his things and leave. He didn't fight me on it. I honestly don't know what to do now. I've been trying to keep myself busy since then to not focus on it, and so far it has worked for the most part. I keep replaying his words over and over in my head, wondering how I could be so blind, so stupid. What do you think? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since he moved out. A lot has happened since my first post. The first week was a blur of paperwork and phone calls. I talked to a lawyer who advised me on getting the ball rolling with the divorce and everything that's needed. I also talked to a therapist. I cried. A lot. The second week was calmer. I focused on picking up the pieces and started doing things I put on the back burner because of marriage. It's like waking up from a long, exhausting dream. One thing I have learned this whole process is to always trust your gut feeling no matter how irrational or sudden it might be. For the first couple of days of the affair, I never suspected anything. But on the days and weeks before I caught him, I had this horrible feeling like something was terribly wrong. And of course, I ignored that gut feeling. And look where it got me. A big part of me wanted to talk to his mistress and make her miserable, but my therapist discouraged me. And now, after doing some thinking, I know she's not really the problem here. Ethan is. I know I could have called her to confront her about it, or to try to get any information, but it's pointless, right? I don't think confronting someone is going to make me feel any better about it. If she didn't know that Ethan was married, then she's also a victim of his deception. But then again, it doesn't make what happened any better. He betrayed me just as much as he betrayed her. He's the only guilty one. I've also spent a good amount of time talking to some of my friends and family about everything. A couple of them expressed concern that I haven't gotten any angry, but honestly, I don't feel angry. I'm mostly just sad, betrayed, and disappointed. It's like I'm mourning for the love I thought I had and the future I thought we were going to have. Most of my friends and family are extremely supportive and told me I'm doing a great job at handling this situation. My parents did try to convince me to fix the relationship, but quickly stopped after I mentioned that he had a whole other relationship. My mom was the first one to scream at him on my behalf. Lol. I'm also starting to notice things about our relationship that I never saw before, which are now huge red flags I was previously blind to. For example, how he would often dismiss my feelings as overreacting, or how he would never apologize for anything unless I made him. Or how I would often have to wait for him so that we could go out. Or how whenever I had a problem, he would change the subject to something else. I'm starting to realize that a big part of the reason why I thought we had a great relationship was because I just adjusted myself and my expectations according to him. We weren't a team. We were two individuals who were in a relationship but lived two separate lives. And I was okay with that for some reason. I wish I had noticed these problems earlier. Perhaps it would have saved me a whole lot of heartbreak. I'm also feeling guilty for not noticing that he was miserable in our marriage. But then again, if I hadn't discovered this secret life, I don't think he ever would have said anything. He would have probably kept his relationship with me as long as he could, and who knows when it would have stopped. So overall, I feel like I'm handling this quite well so far. I started doing yoga again and picked up painting. I'm also going to visit my grandparents for the week as recommended by my family, so we'll see how that goes. Next update will probably be in a few months. I don't know yet. Thanks to all of you for all the kind comments and advice. Update 2. It's been 7 months since my first post. I can't believe that much time has already passed. Since the last update, a lot has changed. I visited my grandparents as planned, and they were a massive help. Honestly, their advice is one of the reasons why I feel so much better now. They made me understand that what I thought was a relationship wasn't really a relationship at all, and that I was living in a fantasy that wasn't real. They also told me that my gut feeling is something I must learn to trust, and that I shouldn't let fear keep me from leaving a place that makes me miserable. I finished my therapy, and now I'm going occasionally once every month. The divorce is finalized and everything is now officially mine. He is officially gone from my life forever. The last time I saw him was in court. He looked defeated, alone, and like a completely different person. He did try to talk to me once after our court date, but I just walked past him and got into my car. I haven't talked to him since then, and I don't plan to do it in the future. A lot of people ask if I talked to his mistress, Aurora, and the answer is no. I never did, and I don't plan to in the future. My therapist made me understand that she's not my problem and that I should focus on healing. I did try to find her social media profiles online, but couldn't find anything. I think she did a pretty good job hiding her online presence. Honestly, I don't even care about what happened anymore. In the past few months, I've met new people, I've gone out more, and I'm starting to live again. I started focusing more on my passions and dreams, and even got a promotion. I've traveled to a couple of places with friends. I've been spending a lot of time with my friends and family, who have become my greatest support system. I've realized that I had completely isolated myself for a relationship that wasn't even worth it. My grandma was also right in saying that a relationship should be easy, not something that requires constant effort. So now I'm very cautious about who I let into my life. I'm not sure if I'll be dating anytime soon, but honestly, I don't mind it. I'm enjoying being single for now and rediscovering things that make me happy. Maybe in the future, when I feel ready, I will consider dating someone new. Maybe not. Who knows? I'm no longer the same person I was before my divorce, and for the first time in my life, I like the person I am becoming. I'm not sure when I'm going to update this again, but thank you to everyone who commented and gave their advice. What do you think are the most important things in a relationship? I discovered my husband had a secret double life and a secret business using my SSN. Now, I don't know what to believe anymore. My husband, Adrian, 34M, and I, Evelyn, 32F, have been together for 10 years and married for 5. We have a seemingly perfect life, a lovely home, successful careers, and a shared love for travel. Or so I thought. Recently, I discovered a series of encrypted files on our shared computer. I'm not tech-savvy, but I know enough to understand that these files weren't just random documents. Adrian always told me that he used encryption for work-related files, but the names were strange. Project Nightingale, Operation Falcon, the Phoenix Protocol. I became increasingly curious. Over the last few weeks, I began secretly learning more about data decryption. Last night, I finally managed to unlock one of the files. What I found was a list of names, dates, and locations, none of which were related to anything work-related. Each entry seemed to be connected to a rendezvous point in various cities, each dated within the past 3 years. The names were all different, but the pattern suggested that these were meetings with different women. There were also a number of strange code-like notations and notes referencing payments or some sort of financial arrangement for each meeting. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. It felt like some sort of spy thriller, but the evidence was right there in front of my eyes. My husband was living a double life, meeting women all over the world while I was back home, thinking everything was fine. I confronted him about it this morning. I didn't show him the files, but I asked him if there was anything he wanted to tell me. He looked genuinely confused at first, but when I pressed him, he confessed to everything. He said it was just a way for him to escape the mundane, something he had been doing since he got bored. As if being married was like some chore to him. He said he was going to stop, but the damage is already done. I don't even know how to process this. I love him, or at least I thought I did. He betrayed me in a way I never thought possible. The world feels like it has turned upside down and I don't know how to keep it steady. I need to figure out where to go from here. Update 1 day later. I'm still reeling from Adrian's confession. I decided to go back to the encrypted files to see if there was any more context. It turns out that those financial arrangements were not small either. Adrian was spending thousands of dollars on each rendezvous, often using a hidden bank account I didn't know existed. When I confronted him about this, he said he made the money through a side hustle that he couldn't tell me about because of some weird clause. He's been lying to me about everything. For so long. The deeper I dig, the worse it gets. I also discovered that the women were not just random. Many of them seemed to be escorts or people from a specific agency. This isn't just a simple case of wandering eyes. He was leading a completely separate life. I've spoken to a lawyer about my options, and they have advised me to keep documenting everything before making any rash decisions. It's a really strange experience. Part of me wants to scream and shout and throw him out, but the other part wants to understand how someone I loved and thought I knew could be capable of such deception. My closest friend, Sophia, offered to let me stay at her place for a while so that I can get some emotional space from Adrian. I told him this morning that I would need some time away from him to think. He seems scared, but honestly, I don't know what his emotions even mean anymore. Update 2-3 days later. I decided to dig even deeper into Adrian's hidden life. I found another encrypted file, this one labeled Nightingale's Legacy. It contained scanned copies of documents revealing a secret business that he created using my social security number without my consent. The business seemed to involve some sort of tax evasion and possibly money laundering. All of these women I was seeing were paid through this strange entity. I have no idea how he was able to get away with it for so long without me noticing. I immediately contacted the lawyer again with this information. He said it could complicate things further because it implicates me in his crimes. So now, it's not just a marriage that he has ruined but potentially my life. My lawyer advised me to cut off all communication with Adrian immediately, and I did. I've moved into my friend's spare room permanently now. I also reached out to the police about the documents I found. They seem to be taking the case seriously, and they are investigating Adrian's business as a separate entity and me as a potentially unknowing victim. It's all a blur. I don't feel angry or sad, just a weird numbness that has set in. I'm slowly beginning to process the magnitude of the betrayal and how utterly calculated he was. All those seemingly romantic gestures and sweet nothings were just a facade covering up his true nature. I've been going to therapy a few times a week to try and navigate these complex emotions and cope with my loss of trust. I also started a support group where I've met many women who have experienced similar situations. It's very validating to know I'm not alone in this. I've also been reading some financial advice blogs to make sure I'm not getting screwed over by Adrian when we settle the divorce. I'm not sure where to go from here, but at least I have some idea of how to move forward. I need to put myself first for the first time in a long time, and I plan on making sure Adrian can never hurt anyone like that ever again. Update 2 weeks later. The police have completed their initial investigation, and I have been questioned a few times. It turns out that Adrian's side hustle wasn't just some small venture. It was a full-fledged operation to facilitate his travels and his meetings with women. He's now facing charges of fraud, tax evasion, identity theft, and a number of other financial crimes. He tried to reach out to me, but I have him blocked. His parents called me asking if I could help them understand what happened and what is happening with their son. I have explained to them what he was doing and that he is not the person we all thought he was. They were shocked. His mother told me she felt bad for not noticing anything when I would visit them or if she called us. She also expressed that she feels like they never truly knew their own son. They apologized to me and said they would do anything to help me during this time of grief. I didn't expect them to do or say that. I was expecting them to defend Adrian. They even offered to help financially during the divorce. I told them I wouldn't accept any help because Adrian's crimes didn't extend to them. I am still seeing my therapist and am trying to learn about the best way to move on from a horrible situation. I still get waves of anxiety and fear about the future, but the waves are fewer than they used to be. I was contacted by some of the women that Adrian was in contact with who were also victimized by his lies. They were also unaware of the type of person Adrian truly was. We've formed a small group and offer each other emotional support. It's oddly comforting to know we're not alone in all this. One of them even mentioned how Adrian would always talk about his wife fondly and made it seem like he was happily married. This only proves that Adrian is a compulsive liar who can't be trusted. I don't think I'll ever truly understand his motives, but I no longer dwell on that. I'm focusing on taking control of my life and building a future where I can trust and feel safe. And I plan on seeing this entire nightmare through to the end. Update 1 month later. The divorce is almost finalized, and I will be free of Adrian in the coming weeks. It's been a really tough process, but my lawyer and I have made sure that he isn't getting away with any of his crimes. My finances are thankfully secure. The business he created in my name is being dissolved, and all of his assets will be seized by the court to help pay for the crimes he committed and to compensate those he hurt. The police are still continuing their investigation, but they told me that Adrian won't be out for quite a while. I feel a sense of justice, and I think I can start moving on now. I've decided to sell the house and move to a new city to try to put all of this behind me. I think I need a fresh start where I am no longer surrounded by the reminders of all the lies and betrayal. The support group has been a tremendous help in healing. It's a place where I don't feel judged or alone and where I can share my thoughts and fears without restraint. I've reconnected with old friends and am even considering dating again. It's still scary thinking about starting over, but I can't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. It's like I'm finally free to create my own narrative, to live a life that is authentically mine and not defined by anyone else's lies or deception. I've also started a non-profit organization to help women who have experienced similar things to me. It makes me feel like I'm helping others and making something good out of something really bad. The road ahead isn't easy, but for the first time in a long time, I can confidently say that I am happy. And it was the best decision I ever made to look further into what Adrian was hiding. In the end, Adrian is now paying for all of his wrongdoings, and I am finally starting my healing process. I finally understand how big of a betrayal I have gone through, and that it's better to just move on rather than dwell on something I can't change. Thank you for all of your support. It means more than you could ever know. My parents always favored my brother, Liam, and I just found out he only wants to mend our relationship to manipulate me into bailing him out again. My brother, Liam, 28M, has always been the golden child. It wasn't even subtle. My parents, especially my mother, adored him. I'm not saying they didn't love me, I'm just saying it was different with Liam. He could do no wrong in their eyes. I, Olivia, 26F, was just there. I tried so hard to get their attention, to earn their praise, but it never seemed enough. It was always Liam, Liam, Liam. He was a talented musician, they'd say. Look at how smart he is. How handsome. Meanwhile, my achievements were glanced over with a polite smile at best. Growing up, this dynamic created a deep-seated resentment in me. I became withdrawn, less expressive, and I started to internalize this idea that I was somehow less than my brother. When Liam decided to open a small business selling custom guitars, my parents were over the moon. They lent him money, helped with the setup, and generally fawned over his every move. I was happy for him at first, I really was, but it started to wear on me. All the attention he got only fueled my feelings of inadequacy, and it didn't help that my mom would constantly compare us. She'd say, "Why can't you be more like Liam? He's so ambitious." Or, "Liam is so good at what he does, what are you even doing with your life?" The constant comparison was agonizing, and I began to hate that question. I have always been a nurse. It's my passion. I have always been a caretaker at heart, but to her, it was not a real job. This feeling only worsened when I met my boyfriend, Marcus. We'd been dating for over a year and we were in love. My parents, however, were not impressed. They liked Marcus well enough, but he was nothing like Liam. They'd always ask me why I settled for him when there could be better guys out there. They said this right in front of him. I think they believed that if they could not have the perfect son, they could at least have a son-in-law that fit their expectations. But I did not fit that mold, and neither did Marcus. It reached a boiling point last year. Liam's business was struggling, so my parents decided to help him once again. This time it was a loan that could amount to $30K. I was furious. I had been working my tail off at the hospital, saving up for a down payment on a house, and yet my parents always had money to spare for Liam's failures. I couldn't take it anymore, so I finally snapped, telling them how unfair their favoritism was, how it had affected me my whole life, and how they had always brushed me off every time I said anything. I expected some sort of understanding, a simple, "I'm sorry, Olivia," would have been enough, but what I got was denial. My mother simply said that I was just jealous of Liam, that I was making things up, that they loved us both equally, and that if my feelings were hurt it was because I was overreacting to perfectly normal parental behavior. My father didn't say anything. I felt unheard, unseen, and incredibly hurt. The worst thing is that my parents had money, but they never offered me a dime even though they knew I was struggling to save up for a house. From that point on, I kept my distance from my family, and I refused to talk to them. It's been over a year since the explosion, and honestly, it feels great being away. But recently, Liam has started contacting me again, wanting to mend our broken relationship. Now he's getting desperate and needs something. Update 1. I've been hesitant to respond to Liam's calls and texts, but he's been relentless. He even started showing up at my apartment, which made me really uncomfortable. I know he means well, but he doesn't seem to get how deep this goes. Eventually, I agreed to meet with him in a public place because I didn't want him to come back to my apartment. We met at a coffee shop near my work. The first few minutes were awkward. He started with his usual, "I miss you and I hope we can put this behind us" speeches. I let him talk, and when he was done, I just looked at him and said, "Why now? Why are you suddenly so interested in rebuilding our relationship after years of ignoring my existence?" I saw him recoil at my words, which made me feel good, I won't lie. Liam fidgeted with the sugar packets, not making eye contact with me. After a long silence, he admitted that he wasn't reaching out just because he missed me. He said that his business was in trouble again. It had been for a while. Apparently, that loan from our parents wasn't enough, and now he's facing bankruptcy. He looked desperate. He needed help, and thought that I was the only one who could understand. I could feel my blood boiling. It's always about him. He explained that he needed my parents' help again, but they were furious with him. They were still mad that they gave him so much money before, and he still hadn't paid it back. It turns out that after our big blow-up last year, they had started to scrutinize him and his financial situations more, and they realized he was bad at managing his business. Liam thought that I could convince them to give him a second chance. He knows that I still have a decent relationship with my parents because I call them to ask about my grandparents, and that, Even though we don't see eye to eye, they still value my opinion. It felt like a punch in the gut. He wasn't seeking my forgiveness, he was just trying to use me again. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound, and I told him that I wasn't going to help him. I said, "Liam, I'm not your mediator. I am not your go-between with our parents. I'm not your punching bag either. You can call them yourself. You can face the consequences of your actions on your own." He tried to argue, saying that we were family and we needed to support each other, but I stood my ground. He's so used to being bailed out all the time that he just cannot fathom why I wouldn't give him what he wants this time. It's like he cannot even contemplate it. I told him about my struggles with his business, my mom's comparisons, my parents' disregard to my emotions, and that none of that was normal, and he could not say anything. He had nothing. I told him that I was not only done helping him, but that I was done being a pawn in his game. This is when he started to cry, saying that I was being unfair. The conversation ended with Liam getting up and storming out, not without throwing an insult or two. The fact that he was trying to guilt-trip me into helping him made me so angry. I know it was cold of me not to care that he was spiraling, but I have suffered enough for him. My mind is made up. I am no longer going to be a part of this circus, and he can deal with his mess himself. Update 2. After my last conversation with Liam, I felt strangely empowered. It was liberating to finally stand up for myself and refuse to be manipulated by my brother's self-inflicted problems. I spent the following weeks focusing on myself, on my career, on my relationship with Marcus. We had been together for almost 2 years now. We were starting to talk about moving in together. We even started to look at houses for fun. During this time, I had minimal contact with my family. I called my grandparents whenever I could, but other than that, I did not pick up any calls or text from my mother. This continued until one morning, I got a call from my mother. She was sobbing. It was my grandmother. She was being rushed to the hospital because she had collapsed in her home. I rushed over there as fast as I could and I found out that my grandmother had a stroke. The doctors said that she was going to make it, but it was going to be a long road of recovery, that she needed 24/7 care at home. I immediately contacted my job and asked for a leave, and told my parents that I was going to move in to help with the care. My mother agreed. She had no other option. Even if she could get a caretaker, that would be another expense she did not want to add on her books. My parents seem to have made it a point to never help anyone who is not named Liam. This is when everything went south. Living under the same roof with them, even if I barely saw them because I was working and taking care of my grandmother, was agonizing. My mother, after she started to see me putting all my effort into taking care of our grandmother, started guilt-tripping me for not being as ambitious as my brother. During this time, Liam was incommunicado. He did not even visit my grandmother even once, not even after I mentioned he could apologize for not only not visiting her, but that he had taken money out of my grandmother's savings without her permission. This I knew because I saw her bank statements when looking for the payments for the house expenses. That's when everything went full circle. She started to complain that I was going to have an easy life once my grandmother died, that all my hard work for nothing, when all I wanted was the best for her. After one of these comments, I finally snapped and told my mom that I was so sorry that she could not control me, that everything that was coming out of her mouth was because of her jealousy. I told her about everything I saw and that I no longer cared, I just could not be around her. That is when my dad, hearing the commotion, stormed in. My mom, as soon as she saw my dad, began crying, saying that I had just told her all her thoughts on the matter and that I called her a jealous mother, when all she did was to protect us all. My father just looked at me, shook his head, and left. This made my mother even worse. This is when I decided that I would never help her again, and that I was completely done with my whole family, all of them. As soon as my grandmother's insurance came in, I hired a caretaker and left. I moved in with Marcus and I have not felt any better. It feels like a big weight was lifted from my shoulders. No contact was not going to be a choice. Now it's my reality, and I am happy with that.